In this episode, I visit with new Kerrville Independent School District Superintendent Brent Ringo, along with Gilbert Pies and Andrew Gay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a special episode. On this podcast, we feature myself, Andrew Gay, Gilbert Pies, representing Texas Hill Country Advisors, Tom Fox, representing the Hill Country Podcast, and Dr. Brent Ringo, our new KISD Superintendent. This podcast will focus on our conversation with Dr. Ringo and his new role with KISD.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Welcome to another episode. And today I am thrilled to have our new superintendent of the Kerrville Independent School District and, most important, Texas Longhorn, Brent Ringo. Dr. Ringo, first of all, thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So could you tell us where you're from and your academic background?
Yes, born and raised Amarillo, Texas, up in the Panhandle. Parents still live in the same house we grew up in. Most recently, professionally, I came from Garland ISD, which is right outside of Dallas. And we served 54,000 students in 71 campuses. But prior to that, my career was always in a one high school community, from Highland Park to Allen, high school principal in Roy City. Academic background, I was very fortunate enough out of high school, was recruited to play football at West Point. And I had decent grades too. And I went to West Point. And while I was there, I did receive a discharge. I had Morton's neuroma, which is nerve damage in my left foot. And due to that, I was not going to be able to serve. And so I transferred to UT Austin, was a business major, interned in the private sector with Arthur Anderson before they crashed with Enron and decided the billable hours were not for me, as everything was about the profit and not about relationships. And went back to UT Austin and said, hey, I want to teach and coach. They said, stay in the business school. We'll certify you to teach at the same time. So I came out as a math teacher, coach, and my principal said, hey, get your master's. We'd love to get you as an assistant principal to work with our teachers and all students. And so I got my master's at Texas State University. And after that, as I was moving up in administration as an assistant principal and associate principal, and then a high school principal, I earned my doctorate at A&M Commerce.
What is your current role?
My current role, I am the new and proud superintendent of Kerrville ISD.
And how long have you been in Kerrville?
I started May 1st on the job. My family was able to get down here on June 3rd. So we moved into our new home on June 3rd.
And what are some of your initial observations, your impression about the Kerrville and KISD?
Great place. Kerrville has always been family-oriented, family-valued city. I've been coming here since the late 90s, before I was married. My brother has a house not too far from here, so we'd visit Kerrville each summer. Got married, still coming this way. We now have 3 kids, still coming down here, and now we have to live here. And then initial observations too, there's a rich tradition and history in KISD. TFND, just the values. We have great faculty and teachers. And so my first 90 days, what I've been doing is just doing a listening tour of what do we start doing, stop doing, and what do we keep doing, just to get those themes.
I've been impressed with your listening tour, but I'm equally impressed with you meeting the community. I met you at several community events.
Yes.
You talked about your vision, KISD, what you have seen. Why is outreach to the community so important in your opinion?
Our schools are community schools. And so they're reflective of our community and our values. And so that outreach, those relationships, it allows people, one, not just to see me and get to know me, they get to see that I'm a person. I'm not just the superintendent of schools. And so having those relationships in the community, hopefully when people see me and know me, there's always rumors, and social media can take a life of its own at times. And so having that outreach, it allows for that open conversation, an open bridge, but then it also allows me to support what is happening in our community outside of our schools.
I also grew up in a one high school town, and everybody knew the superintendent. And if he went to the grocery store, if he went to wherever, the barbershop, he got a pat on the back or maybe something different. If you found that to be true in Kerrville.
We have. My boys are 9 and 7. Our daughter's 3. And we've been out and about often. We do like to be out in the community. We like to go to community events, not just our district events. And we were shopping at HEB, picking up our groceries, and we got stopped about the 3rd time. And it's pretty funny. My boy's perspective is different, obviously, than an adult's perspective. But after the 3rd time, Brody, my oldest, asked me, Dad, are you famous? And I had to explain to him it's nothing to do with being famous. It's all the people that we stopped to talk to were either a couple of employees in KISD, then one was a parent, and it just getting those relational conversations going.
One of the things that's impressed me about the KISD is actually the support in the form of the KISD Foundation. And there
Yes.
seems to be great community support to provide both resources and even people that KISD may not be able to afford or have budget for on its own. Could you say a few words about that?
Oh yeah, the KPSF Foundation is
KPSF.
amazing. We're able to do a lot of what we do because of their support and their fundraising efforts. Just to share, and I always like to share this information when I'm able to. School districts in the state of Texas are still operating on 2019 revenues. So as you and I have paid more in property taxes, the state has cut our share of funding. So it's a seesaw effect. So even though property values have gone up, higher taxes are coming in on the state share, it's reduced. And in order to make the budget work, and as eggs have increased, gas, utilities, and we're having to make things work on the same revenue in 2019. And so the KPSF Foundation has really stepped in to help with our teachers, supplies, grants. It's a phenomenal organization.
I heard you speak at the Rotary Club, and you told for me a very powerful story about one of your boys who had a hearing defect and was able to get medical treatment for that. But that was just part of it. The other part was being able to training after he had the medical treatment and how important that was for him. Could you say a few words about those types of, not the medical part, but the socialization part and the training part, and how KISD will help either special needs students, special education, or those who just might need a little more?
Yes, that's a great question. Lynn Paulo, she's our director of special education. And the great example you brought up, I spoke to that, I believe, at Rotary. I have a 9-year-old boy, 7-year-old son also, and then a 3-year-old daughter. But my 7-year-old early on had a lot of ear infections just every week. My 9-year-old did not. And so as he learned to speak, it was very mumbled. And so he's had to be in speech pathology since he's been able to speak, still doing that to this day. And he's had to have additional services in school to get to where he needs to be, whereas my 9-year-old is not. And so just to reiterate that with what we do in KISD, there are our students, for whatever reason, speech pathology, ADHD, whatever supports are needed, it's working with our team, our teachers, to really support that individual student to get the services they need so they can be successful.
Jens?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, maybe we can shift gears a little bit here. And I think where you came from was a little bit larger scale than it was here. Maybe you can talk about some of the, so far, the apparent positive differences maybe that you've noticed between where you came from back in Garland versus here. And if I did my homework, I think there's something like 71 campuses, 74,000 kids that you were in charge of, something like that.
54,000.
Right, 54,000.
Yep.
Okay. I was trying to help you out there a
Nope,
little bit.
you're good, you're good.
So anyway, if you want to talk about that, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Prior to Garland, I was in Highland Park, one high school community, 7,000 kids. Allen, one high school town, which was large, 21,000 kids. And before that, Royce City, roughly 7,000 kids also. Yeah. What helped our team be so successful in Garland, we really applied a one high school focus town to the 7 high schools and to that type of community. And so there it was really scaling things down to a one high school town focus to get every high school CMR Excel scores. I will share Garland ISD most recently as I left, our CCMR score, which is college, career, military readiness, earned a 94.
Okay.
It's the second highest score in Dallas County, only behind Highland Park ISD. And coming to Kerrville and that focus and the differences there, one high school community, as superintendent, I get to be more on the dirt and in the weeds and involved. And so that aspect of it, of being able to do the work and being involved with our teachers, our principals, that is the biggest difference of coming from a large district back down to a small district.
Awesome. Okay, so along that same line of thinking, how do you think that if you are a little more hands-on or able to be a little more hands-on down here, how do you envision yourself either maybe supporting and leveraging technology and innovation within the teaching community here for KISD teachers and its students? Like, what's your perspective about that?
Yeah, it's continuing to grow on what KISD has been doing. The high school, the middle school, where they have cows, the carts, they call them the cows, but the access technology is vital to student success. As they get out of our schools, they're going to go into a profession that's going to require them to use a computer or a tablet, or if they go to one of the service academies, West Point, Naval Academy, they're going to have to know how to use that, or even Schreiner University. And so goal being to able to educate our kids to use that correctly and as they should to support the academics.
And I guess the last question for me that I'll ask you right now would be, what are some of the things you mentioned, start, stop, and continuing things to do for
Mhm.
KISD. So maybe what are some of those things that in each one of those buckets that maybe have your attention so far?
Yeah, a great question. Yeah, and to elaborate, we had a fourth question with that too. What was the best thing, or what is the best thing about my department or campus? Because also that helps me learn the values, the traditions of that specific department or campus. Because one thing I do love too, every campus has its own unique identity. The Starkey Scorpions has their sausage supper, and I think next year is their 61st annual supper coming up. And you have the Tally Eagles, who has its own identity too. But the themes that come from that, I'm still in my first 90 days. And what I'm doing now is actually going back to our leadership team of principals and letting them see and help identify those themes.
Yeah.
I've done that. I've done that with our assistant superintendents. I've done it with our principals. We're going to do it next with our assistant principals. And what is very great to see, we've started with the first two. We started with what's the greatest thing about my department or campus. The second one is what do we keep doing? And so those themes that have emerged have been the same no matter who we've gone through that process with. And so obviously the keeps that have came out in those themes, TFND, the profile of a graduate, our vision, where every student's first, have been the top keeps. Our professional development days that are once in 6 weeks at our campuses have been the top 4 themes. There's some others that are in there. One I'm most proud of has been the pride of our community, the support from our community. KPSF has been identified in that. And so those really help celebrate the successes we have in place. And then what we're doing next are the stops and starts and those conversations. So it's just not Brent Ringo saying, hey, here's what we're changing and here's why. That really drives those changes that take place because it's coming from the input of staff, faculty, teachers, principals.
Yeah, wonderful.
Excellent. You mentioned something earlier about the teachers and how they're a very vital part, of course, the overall education experience that students have. And you also talked a little bit earlier about the funding mechanism that's happening right now. Now, everybody that's in Texas knows that the state of Texas has decided to fund schools through property taxes. But if they don't increase the revenue and share some of that revenue with school districts, you obviously have a tougher time to make things work. Number one, how do you plan to attract and keep the teachers that you have now? And then number two, what do you think is going to be the end result of the less funding that is given to you by the state? Those are really two important things in my mind that are challenges that are coming up. Obviously, housing is a very difficult thing for teachers, but I'm sure there's some other ideas that you have too in how to keep and then attract new teachers.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that what you just expressed is not just a Kerrville ISD issue. It's not just statewide, it's national. In 2021, 2022, our governor had a teacher vacancy task force to get input on what we can do to recruit teachers into the system, keep teachers in our system. And from that task force, there were 7 recommendations that came out, and there was a $63 billion surplus at the state this last session, $33 billion in the rainy day fund, $30 billion in the state budget. Public education is the only sector of the state budget that did not receive an increase. And so with that, the House Republicans have voted yes to increase public school funding. The Senate Republicans have voted no to increase school funding. And so that challenge is very real. And in order to make that budget work, many districts across the state are having to go into what they call the fund balance operationally to do raises. Because if not, many employees will see a pay decrease because insurance costs are increasing. And so we're really having to look at budget where things can be reduced because we're already 4 years past 2019 numbers of revenue with inflation. And it's made operational budgets even tighter of what we're able to buy in classrooms. And that's where KPSF comes in and their support to really help us get where we need to be. And so it's looking at anything and everything, ways to generate additional revenue locally that's not taxable or from taxes, but also looking at working with our city on housing and what housing looks like. There's some new developments coming in that are affordable for teachers and public servants. But then I know even Schreiner University is partnering with Peterson Health to apply to support housing for nurses, to get nurses here. And so it's having all those types of conversations, not just in the short term, but the long term, to make that work.
Interesting. So we're going to have to pay more to get into the football games. And if my kid wants to eat lunch, he's going to have to pay.
Before I fly, that is not true. Not true.
One of the things, because I have children that go to KISD, and there's two big things that my kids have always pointed out to me: the blatant disrespect and abuse that teachers take. What do you think is the solution to that problem? And then number two, the prevalence of bullying and the inability to really get a handle on some of that. What do you think are the solutions to those two problems as you see it right now in KISD?
Yeah, our schools are community schools. We invite our parents into the schools to volunteer to see. At points, at times, there are moments where some kids are disrespectful, but as a whole, we have great students in KISD. And then for our teachers, it's supporting our teachers and our administration when there is a disruption and addressing the disruption at hand. Because the other piece of that also is one disruption, social media is not always the truth of what occurred at the campus. And so it's that community partnership of having parents. Many of our schools, we have parents who volunteer and come in, but being very serious about bullying and very serious about the discipline consequences also.
Excellent.
I'm coming up on my 50th anniversary of my high school graduation. Obviously, the world is very different than when I graduated from high school. So I wanted to ask, in terms of 2025 or even beyond, the not so much vocational requirements or technical requirements, but almost an innovation mindset is required today for a person graduating from high school. How do you help foster that constant change, constant opportunity, but be ready for it to a student of today?
Yeah, one thing that's been great working with being involved with the Chamber, the Economic Development Corporation, our local business leaders, you hear the needs that are out there. And so it's those partnerships, partnering with them because they do provide resources. And within many of our current industries in Kerrville, there are certifications that are available to our students to get when they graduate high school, where they're able to, and if they choose to enter that profession in a very, I say high paying, but a livable wage, a great livable wage.
Yeah.
And so also beyond that is looking, okay, just beyond the industry certifications, what are we able to do locally at our high school and working with our high school team that expands what we do now, even beyond dual credit. In my prior district, we were able to get 3 of our high schools where every student earned an associate's degree. And then beyond that, partnering with SMU in North Texas, that as long as they earn that associate's degree and were accepted into their university under the normal guidelines, they had a scholarship for the last 2 years. And so it's being innovative and with our industry partners, innovative with our local universities and colleges, and seeing what resources are available out there to support us because resources are so tight.
What about security? I want to give you a little spot to talk about that. I know that's a hot topic. I know you've talked to some of our friends that have interviewed you previously. And so maybe if you want to say a few words about that, maybe the school marshal program.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, when I drop my kids off at school, my first response every time they get off is I say a little prayer and say, I hope today that you're safe at this school, because it's scary as a parent when you drop your kid off, because you honestly, I've never thought about this before until Uvalde happened. I always think, is this going to be the last time I ever see him?
Yeah.
And it's scary.
It is. Yep. I'm a dad. My kids are in school too. And oftentimes the teachers spend more time with my own kids than I get to with them. They're with them every single day. They obviously see the behaviors of my kids more than I do too, and the academic side of them. And so that safety piece is first and foremost in everything we do. And I'm proud to say that within Kerrville ISD this coming year, for the first time ever, we would have to float a school resource officer between our elementary campuses. We always had one at the high school, one at the middle school, and between the 4 elementary campuses, we had 2 floaters. This coming year, we will have a marshal or a school resource officer at every single campus that is there to really just protect our students and our faculty. They're on site. And so I think that's a key piece. Another one to highlight also, that's very proud to say, under new security measures, there's been required audit for exterior door checks. Kerrville ISD passed 100% of these audits this past year. That's a huge focus on making sure all exterior doors are locked. But beyond that, we have safety training with all teachers and students. Part of that is required by the state, or a lot of that is required by the state actually. But being able to have a marshal or SRO who is on campus all day or every day should provide and hopes to provide a sense of relief to me as a parent. And also, I will say to this day, schools as a whole are still more safe than many areas across the country. From grocery stores to malls, our schools, for the most part, are very safe for our students and faculty.
Thank you for that. And lastly, I wanted to ask you about Monday is start of school. So
Yeah.
how are you feeling about where we're at
Great.
currently?
It's been
Okay.
a great week. Our brand new to KISD teachers started last week, had 2 days with them. Our returning teachers and staff started this week, bus drivers, maintenance. Maintenance team has been working evenings, weekends, make sure those ACs are still functioning and running because we want full classrooms on Monday. And as with anything, Monday brings back routine for our parents and students, kids getting back up early. There's going to be more traffic on the roads.
Yes.
And because of that, just to know those first couple of weeks, there's going to be delays, and that's okay. The most key piece is just to make sure our kids get to school safely, get home safely, keep your eyes up on the road because there are bikers and there's walkers, and being on that cell phone is a distraction. And buses will be stopping, picking up kids. So we are very excited for Monday. We had a great convocation this morning with all 700 employees. Pep rally atmosphere. Our teachers of the year, Miss Kenna Bush, the elementary teacher of the year, and our high school teacher of the year, Mr. David Riley, spoke. I spoke. Cheerleaders were there. Germline was there. But Monday, I'm ready for our students to show up. It's great.
That's awesome.
Exciting for you. By the way, in case you didn't know, Steve Schwartz, the principal for Hill Country High School, he's the most awesome guy on the planet.
Great guy. Legend.
Yes.
I was going to say legend.
His son's a assistant principal over at Tally. His dad, obviously, family, a lot of family and education.
That's right.
But he's a great guy.
Steve's the man.
Yep.
Steve is the man.
He's the man. I don't
Don't
want to
ever lose
forget.
him.
So just because if parents are listening, we've had band going since August 1st. Those kids have been out there 8 to 4 every day. A lot of water breaks. But Mr. Young, the band director, football and volleyball, cheer, the Golden Girls, a lot of students are already back in action, have been in action for weeks.
It's awesome. What any other last questions from you two, or anything that we haven't touched on that you haven't talked about already on any of the other interviews or that you want to mention?
One other thing I'll ask, if you don't mind, speaking of Steve Schwartz and Hill Country High School, that's a unique program, I think. It obviously gives kids that are looking for a second chance or just can't find a way to make it work in the regular route. It gives them a chance to finish high school. And there's obviously, it's probably ideal for kids that are just struggling with the regular process, but they can still go to Hill Country High School. It's innovation like that I think keeps kids involved and excited about continuing their education, because let's face it, it's for a lot of kids nowadays, the easiest thing to do is nothing and drop out of school and just go some other route. But when you have something like Hill Country High School, it gives them a reason to stick around. And what do you think in terms of innovation, in teaching innovation? Because all of us, I think, went to school, high school, and we've been through that cycle. And for a lot of us, it's just been the same thing over and over again, just for different people, different time. But things have changed. Do you think that there's a way that you could bring the educational experience and make it a little bit different, make it a little more serving to the kids that find just need a different path than the traditional path? Really, what I'm saying is that I think for a lot of the political process, in terms of funding, a lot of politicians want the school districts to do something different. In other words, there's been a rise of charter schools, voucher programs, things of that nature. They're really trying to kick the traditional model in the shins, and they want a different way to do things. Do you think that there's a way for KISD to do things different to help the educational process and maybe get that funding and stop or minimize the prevalence of charter schools? Now, charter schools obviously aren't a big deal here because we don't have any, but there are private schools here in town, and there's obviously other districts around that compete in many ways for the same students. Is there a way, do you think, that KISD can do things differently?
Yeah, just to highlight, there's a big misconception of charter schools. Of all the charter schools in the state of Texas, they make up about 11% of the campuses or enrollment, but they make up more than half of the F grades. So 89% of public schools, but charter schools take up over half. Most charter schools last less than 4 years once the doors open. Not to say there's not good charter schools out there, but then you also hear the word right now, vouchers or parent empowerment. But what that really means is allocating $600 million of taxpayer dollars to support private school tuition, to subsidize private school tuition. That private school could be Catholic, Baptist, Muslim, anything you want to open and do. And you as a taxpayer cannot show up to ask how those dollars are spent. So there's a big misconception of these other schools that are available. But there are good ones out there, and there are good private schools too, and parents have that choice for that. But within KISD, I think KISD has been very innovative in what we've done so far. Where there's 12 certification programs up at the high school. We look on expanding that and also expanding to the free associate's degree program at some point and having those conversations. The graduation rates, when you look at that too, we're up there in the 90% range. And so having these options available, we have more kids getting certifications. Hill Country High School is also that option for kids. We have kids who have to support themselves in the work. We have kids who get behind academically, and that option is available. And so our goal is to continue to do what is best for all kids and provide each of them a pathway, and whatever that pathway may be.
Excellent.
All right, guys. I think, unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of our time here. Dr. Ringo, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything last minute things you want to share that we didn't cover or anything?
Yeah, no, just to share, we look forward to a great 23-24 school year. In May, when I showed up, a lot of the words that were used by our teachers, just going in classrooms, I was able to basically meet every single teacher in the district and go to every single campus at least 6 times. But the word inspired came out a lot. And so that convocation, we had shown a video of teachers talking to kids one-on-one that we filmed last May, and what that kid meant to them in their career and why they do what they do. And that hashtag for our parents, if you're bringing your kids to school Monday and you're taking that first day of school pictures, use that hashtag KISD Inspires. We want to show all the positives happening across our district, not just on Monday, but through this school year. And really just, it's going to be a great school year. Your kids are in good hands with our teachers and our staff. And I say that as a father, I look forward to dropping my kids off at school on Monday too. And we look forward to a great school year.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Yep. Thank
for
you.
your time. Okay, guys, that'll do it for us. Thank you for tuning in. Take care. Have a great weekend. See you later.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Hill Country Podcast. If you've enjoyed it, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. The Hill Country Podcast is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.